जिंदा खुदा से दिल जो लगाते तो खूब था।
जिंदा खुदा से दिल जो लगाते तो खूब था।
मुर्दा बुतों से जान, मुर्दा बुतों से जान छुड़ाते तो खूब था।
Assalamu alaikum. I think we can begin. So, can may I request Said Shaway Sinkanda to do it out, please?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا فاتخذت من دونهم حجابا فأرسلنا إليها روحنا فتمثل لها بشرا سويا قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا قال إنما أنا رسول ربك ليهب لك غلاما زكيا قالت أنى يكون لي غلام ولم يمسسني بشرا ولم ألق بغيا قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين ولنجعله آية للناس ورحمة منه وكان أمرا مقضيا فحملته فانتبذت به مكانا قصيا. And now I'll be doing English translation. In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful, and relate the story of Mary as mentioned in the book, when she withdrew from her people to a place to the east, and screened herself off from them. Then we sent our angel to her, and he appeared to her in the form of a perfect man. She said, I seek refuge with the gracious God from thee, if indeed thou dost fear him. He replied, I am only a messenger of thy Lord, that I may bestow on thee a righteous son. She said, How can I have a son when no man has touched me, neither have I been unchaste? He replied, Thus it is, but says thy Lord, it is easy for me, and we shall do so that we make him a sign unto men, and a mercy from us, and it is a thing decreed. So she convinced him and withdrew with him to a remote place. Jazakallah.
Okay, Jazakallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Right, today I wish to talk about the history of Christmas. It will be in two parts. And again, there will be opportunities for any comments or any questions. Right, so the first question that obviously we should ask is that Christmas is meant to be celebrating the birth of Jesus. So is this true? When was Jesus alayhi salam born? Now, we know that Christmas Day is celebrated around the world on the 25th of December. So this is the same date everywhere. But was this really when Jesus alayhi salam was born? When we look at the Holy Quran, we see that it relates in chapter 19, verse 24. So she, Mary, the mother of Jesus, conceived him, Jesus, and withdrew with him to a remote place. And the pains of childbirth drove her onto the trunk of a palm tree. And then moves on to verse number 26. And shake towards thyself the trunk of the palm tree. This is Allah telling Mary. It will drop upon the fresh, ripe dates. Now, according to these verses, the birth of Jesus took place when there were fresh dates that were on the date palm trees in Palestine. And normally that is in the season of the months of August to September, not in December where it's far too cold. Again, if we look to the Holy Bible in Luke chapter 2, verses 7 to 8, it states, and there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. So again, from this verse, we can see that the birth of Jesus took place when there were shepherds who were watching their flocks at night. Now that means it's a lambing season, and they obviously were scared that the wolves might come along and eat the lambs, and this is why they were out at night. But the lambing season again is not found in winter, but again around the months of August or to September. So it's clear from the Holy Quran and the Holy Bible, in fact, that the 20th of December is not the birth date of Jesus. So then how did we get to this date of the 25th of December? Now, it's generally felt that in the 4th century, in 340 AD, the fathers of the church chose this date to celebrate the birth of Jesus. So they on purposely chose this date. So then, of course, the question comes that why? Why choose this date, the 25th of December? Now, we see that the pagans worshipped the winter solstice on this date, the 25th of December. It was a major festival which was held to celebrate the birth of the sun in the sky. So, to appease the pagans who had converted to Christianity, they decided to change it from the worship of the sun to the worship of the Son of God. Now, this fact is actually a accepted view of many commentators of the Bible. Of course, it's something which is very rarely mentioned, but when we study, we find that there are people who have made this point, and it is well known. We see, for instance, in The Rise of Christianity by Bishop Barnes, he has said, there is, moreover, no authority for the belief that December 25th was the actual birthday of Jesus. Again, in the Encyclopedia Britannica, the exact date and year of Christ's birth has never been satisfactorily settled. But then the fathers of the church in AD 340 decided on the date to celebrate the event. They wisely chose the date of the winter solstice, which was firmly fixed in the minds of the people and which was the most important festival. Again, in the Chambers Encyclopedia, it states, in the second place, the winter solstice was regarded as the birth date of the sun, and at Rome on the 25th of December was observed a pagan festival of the nativity of the Sol Invictus. The church, unable to stamp out this popular festival, spiritualized it as the feast of the nativity of the Son of Righteousness. Okay, so it shows that the 25th of December is not the actual true date of the birth of Jesus. But why should we be concerned about whether it is a correct date or not? Actually, Jesus prophesied the coming of the Comforter, who we believe was the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And Jesus said that one of his roles of this Comforter was that he shall glorify me. The Comforter will glorify Jesus, for he shall receive of mine and shall show it unto you. John 16:14. And so we know that the Holy Quran, which is the Word of God, has removed many false allegations against Jesus, like his birth, his mission, and his death, and thereby has glorified Jesus by stating the truth. Not only has it cleared the allegation on his mother of whether it was a virgin birth, but stated that she was indeed pure and a virgin, and it was Allah who brought about his birth as a sign and a warning for the Jews, because it was a last chance for them to change and reform. But it's also clear that the allegation of when he was born, that it shouldn't have been taken to please man, and allowed them to worship the sun or worship the Son of God. In Islam, of course, we don't celebrate the birthday of the Holy Prophet Muhammad or of any prophet, in fact. But instead, what we do is that we recognize the life and example and remind ourselves of what they said and achieved to help us to purify ourselves. This, we believe, is the best way in which we can celebrate a life of any prophet. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the history of Christmas next. But first of all, is there any questions or comments that anybody wants to make so far on this particular bit about the birth date of Jesus? Same as usual, you can go on chat and someone will read it out, or you can raise your hand or just remove the mic and speak. So has anybody got anything to say, or shall we move on?
Ravi sir, we have not received any question in chat so far.
Okay. I mean, as normal, you can always come back to this, so no problem. So let's move on and talk about the history of Christmas. Now, in fact, the church cancelled Christmas. I don't think many people know about this. By the Middle Ages, Christians celebrated Christmas by attending the church, but then celebrating, partying, and drinking, much like today. In the early 17th century, a wave of religious reform changed the way Christmas was celebrated in Europe. When Oliver Cromwell and his Puritan forces took over England in 1645, they vowed to rid England of decadence. And as part of their effort, they actually cancelled Christmas. By popular demand, Charles II was restored to the throne, and with him came the return of this popular holiday. Now, the Pilgrims who left and obviously went to America, they were English separatists, and they went to America in 1620. Now, they were even more orthodox in their Puritan beliefs than Cromwell was. And as a result of that, Christmas was not a holiday in early America. From 1659 to 1681, the celebration of Christmas was actually outlawed in Boston. Of course, in those days, it was mainly on the East Coast where the settlers were. It wasn't until the 19th century that Americans began to embrace Christmas. In 1891, a person called Washington Irving wrote a series of stories about the celebration of Christmas. And he wanted to promote Christmas as a peaceful, warm-hearted holiday to bring together people. He implied that his invented tradition was actually the true customs of the season. Also around this time, Charles Dickens created the classic holiday tale, A Christmas Carol. The story's message was about the importance of charity and goodwill towards all humankind. And this struck a powerful chord in the Victorian society, the benefits of celebrating the holiday. Because Christmas provided families with a day when they could lavish attention and gifts on their children without appearing to spoil them. So now I'm going to go through some of these traditions of Christmas. First of all, Father Christmas. The legend of Father Christmas, aka Santa Claus, can be traced back to a monk who was named Saint Nicholas, who was born in Turkey around 280 AD. Saint Nicholas gave away all of his inherited wealth and traveled the countryside, helping the poor and the sick. Now, the Dutch for Saint Nicholas is Sint Nicolaas, or something like that, or Sinterklaas, which became shortened as Santa Claus. In 1822, the minister Clement Clark Moore wrote a Christmas poem, a very famous Christmas poem called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." In this poem, it depicted Santa Claus as a jolly man who flies from home to home on a sledge driven by reindeer to deliver toys. The iconic version of Santa Claus as a jolly man in red with a white beard and a sack of toys was drawn in 1881 by Thomas Nast. It took many years for authors and illustrators to agree that Father Christmas's costume should be portrayed as red. Sometimes it was green, white, and other colors. Mass media approval of the red costume came following a Coca-Cola advertising campaign that was launched in 1931. So they switched the pipe of Santa Claus into the bottle Coke, and this promoted Coca-Cola, but also promoted this red dress. Now, the Christmas tree. Many ancient people believed that the sun was a god and that winter came every year because the sun god had become sick and weak. They celebrated the solstice, because it meant that at last the sun god would begin to get well. Evergreen herbors reminded them of all the green plants that would grow again when the sun god was strong and summer would return. Germany is credited with starting the Christmas tree tradition as we now know it in the 16th century, when devout Christians brought decorated trees into their homes. Some built Christmas pyramids of wood and decorated them with evergreens and candles if wood was scarce. It is a widely held belief that Martin Luther first added lighted candles on a tree. In 1846, the popular royals, the Queen Victoria and her German Prince Albert, were sketched in an illustrated London News, standing with their children around a Christmas tree. As Queen Victoria was very popular with her subjects, and it immediately became fashionable, so the Christmas tree finally had arrived. Right, the next one is Rudolph and the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Rudolph is the most famous reindeer of all. Was the product of Robert L. May's imagination in 1939. Now here you can see a typical picture of 8 reindeers, not including Rudolph. The copywriter wrote a poem about a reindeer, and they did this to lure customers into the Montgomery Ward department store. Names of the 9 reindeer, there were 8, but then it became 9, are Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen, and Rupert. Now, giving gifts. The gift giving was a pagan practice of ancient Rome at the time of the winter solstice, when they celebrated the Saturnalia holiday. I'm sorry about mispronouncing many of these things. When Christmas had been given the date of the 25th of December, they linked the gift giving with the story of the 3 wise men and Saint Nicholas, who was known for giving gifts. It was also linked to a song called Good King Wenceslas. Now, the story of the 3 wise men. This is something which I've given some thought to. It's not this is not an Ahmadi belief, but it's my own feelings. Now, first thing we find is that according to Matthew, it mentions about the three wise men. It's not mentioned in any of the other Gospels. It's only mentioned in Matthew. And he states that Jesus was born in Bethlehem and that Herod, who was the king, he heard a prophecy in Jerusalem when three wise men apparently came after seeing a star, and following that star, they came to Jerusalem. And they told him about this prophecy of a Jew who was going to become the king of the Jews. And so he, to please them and to try and get some more, he sent these wise men to the east to Bethlehem to find out more and tell him about this so-called king of Jews. So apparently these three wise men again saw this star, and it then moved towards the east again and then stood over where the child was. Now, again, we often see the baby and the three wise men giving the gifts to the baby, but actually it just says child. It's about a 1-year-old child when they actually did come. And apparently they came to worship him. But then they saw a dream which warned them not to return to Herod because he had his own plans. And apparently they brought gifts, which was gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, the star, some believe that it was Halley's Comet. I mean, we see that this star was moving. We know that stars don't move, it's the Earth that moves. So that gives the image of a comet. But then apparently the star stood still over where Jesus was supposedly meant to be, which again, comets don't do. And of course, comets, they take some time. They're only there for maybe a maximum of a week. Yet these people came from the east, traveled all the way, and then again to Bethlehem. It would have taken a long time. So this is why I'm saying that this story doesn't seem to ring true. If it was Halley's Comet, then apparently there was one that appeared in 12 BC. And some people feel it could be the Star of Bethlehem. Now, again, the actual date, although it says the Christian calendar starts at 0 AD, again, it's felt that Jesus was born before that time. So 12 BC could well have been a date even before that. So we're not sure exactly when Jesus was born. But comets, of course, is a sign for prophets. The Prophet Messiah has also mentioned about the comets being a sign for prophets. But as I said, this particular star appeared and then apparently stood over the child. And this is what I'm doubting. I feel that this doesn't seem to ring true. But anyway, let's go further into the story. So who were these three wise men? Here's a picture with Harold advising them to go to Bethlehem. Now, contrary to popular Christian belief, the Bible doesn't actually say how many. It's a guess due to the three gifts that they gave, but actually many people think there was about 12 or even more. Nor were they kings. Later on, it came that there were three wise kings, but the Bible doesn't mention anything about kings, and it was just, again, trying to emphasize the importance of these people, that they made them into kings. The Bible states that they were Magio, which is Greek, or Magi, and it's felt that these actually were followers of the religion of Zoroastrianism, but we don't for sure know. If it was, then the word likely refers to experts in astronomy or other occult practices, and it's Magi comes to magic. So mainly, I'd say, because they were following the stars, this is where they're getting these ideas from. Now, the question is, if they were Zoroastrians, what's the interest for them in a Jewish prophecy? Now, of course, we also believe that the lost sheep of the house of Israel was scattered all over the east. So some people say, in the Jamaat as well, that perhaps these were Jews that had been scattered because they say they came from India, Arabia, Persia. So maybe it was some Jewish tribes that could show an interest in Jewish prophecy. But otherwise, why? Why would they be interested in a Jewish prophecy, making such efforts to go to worship this apparent king? Matthew seems to be trying to attach Jesus' birth to a Jewish prophecy of the coming of the Messiah. And this is a common pattern we see with the Gospels. So here we can see, for instance, in Psalms chapter 72, verse 10 to 15, about how kings shall bring presents and fall down before him. And they also, in that particular verse, is mentioned about gold. So it fits in quite nicely, whether this story is true or not. But as I said, they like to try to show that Messiah of Jesus was actually fulfillment of prophecies in the Bible, Old Testament. Again, we see that Matthew also tries to link Jesus to David, because this is also a prophecy that he will be of the line of David. For instance, in Matthew 1:1, Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, trying to make this strong link. And in Matthew 1:20, it comes from Joseph, thou art son of David. And this is how the link comes with Jesus. But of course, Joseph was not the father of Jesus, so that goes right out the window. But this is what they was attempting to do. Of course, in the Holy Quran, in chapter 19, verse 29, it mentions about Jesus ibn Maryam, the son of Miriam, who was also the sister of Aaron. And Aaron, we believe, is because of the priestly class. This makes more sense that Jesus would have come from that particular line, rather than trying to make him into David, a king of David. Now, again, if we turn to the story of King Herod, when Herod realized the Magi was not returning, as I said, they saw a dream and they didn't return, he became furious apparently, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old or under, to kill the prophesied king of the Jews. They fled to Egypt. You can see on the map, you can see Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Nazareth, where again Jesus was meant to come from, and Egypt. Now, this story to me, it sounds very much like Moses' birth, and how, again, the Pharaoh wanted to kill all the young children. And again, do we find any record of this? We know that Herod died in 4 BC. And let's say BC means before Christ. But that could still fit in, because I don't think that Jesus was born on AD. But again, most modern biographers of Herod dismiss Matthew's story as an invention. For instance, Michael Grant states the tale is not history, but myth and folklore. As I said, it's not found in the other Gospels. No one mentions this. And even Josephus, who's a famous Jewish historian, he doesn't mention this. He mentions many of the misdeeds of Herod. Why didn't he mention this? So again, it doesn't seem to be ringing true. But anyway, I don't know best what is the story. I just thought I'll throw that out there. Now, coming back to this gifting. Initially, it was gifts which you gave to your superiors, but later on it became a less common, and the idea of giving gifts to children developed around the time of the Protestant Reformation. Christmas was still very rowdy and heavy drinking. It was used as a bid to reduce this rowdiness and keep children away from the streets. By opening the presents, they were occupied with the presents, so they wouldn't get caught up in all this drunken display. The gift giving used to take place on December the 6th, around St. Nicholas Day or around New Year's Eve. But by the end of the 19th century, it was replaced by Christmas Eve. With the Christmas season lasting 12 days, a gift was given for each of the 12 days, or on Christmas Day or the 12th night, the first and last days of the Christmas season, respectively. Okay, so again, we'll open it up for everyone. Anybody want to say anything, any questions, any comments, anything they'd like to add? This is now your opportunity. Or if there's any chats.
Assalamualaikum, Rabbi Saab. We do have some questions in the chat. The first one is, who invented Christmas?
Well, as I said, it's the church leaders invented the idea of the birth of Christmas, and that's where it started. And as I've been mentioning about the history, that different aspects have crept in until we get the modern day Christmas. And of course, it keeps changing. Even these days, we're seeing that now all these lights mean, when I was young, you put fairy lights around the Christmas tree and things like that. But this houses all lit up. This is again American tradition, which has crept in. So these traditions have developed over the years, and this is why I showed the history of how many of these things have developed. And of course, most of these things have got nothing to do with religion. It's become a very materialistic day where a lot of money is spent. So the date, as I said, I explained, was actually not on the 25th, but because they used to have this pagan holiday on the 25th of December, and they couldn't get the pagans away from that. So this is how they managed to do it, by creating a religious day on that day. And because they changed the sun to the Son of God, so they was able to make the pagans happy enough to join in that festival. But as I said, this was a very, as it is these days, a very rowdy time where people enjoyed their drink and enjoyed their merrymaking as such. Okay, any other question you said? There was a few.
Yes, one more is it permissible to put up a Christmas tree without celebrating Christmas?
Without celebrating Christmas. So why are you putting a Christmas tree up then? The whole purpose of the Christmas tree is to show that you're celebrating Christmas. It's just like Halloween and putting a pumpkin outside and saying, well, I don't actually celebrate Halloween. You're telling people that you actually are. So no, this has got nothing to do with us. If you want to put up a Christmas tree or light up your house or anything like that, do that on the Eid days. This is what we celebrate. We don't celebrate Christmas. We should not get involved in these things. As I said, not really religious, they are pagan. Okay, any other question on the chat?
No, that's it.
Okay, Michael, Muzaffar, you want to ask something?
Right.
Yeah.
There's just one small point, is that the Russian Orthodox Church celebrate Christmas on the 7th of January because the Julian calendar predated the Gregorian calendar, which made it like the 25th. But I agree with what you said about the pagan festival of the Sol Invictus, which was the Roman worship of the sun god, and also the solstice as well, which was the pagan sort of non-Roman version of the same thing. But the Christmas itself wasn't celebrated until the 4th century, and it was only when when Emperor Constantine of Rome became the first Christian emperor, even though he was Christian in name only, that that Christianity became the official religion of Rome, that they had enough power to try and draw in pagans and other people, so they changed the terminology of both of their festivals into Christian ones to, as you say, to attract more people towards Christianity. And going back to Elizabethan days, there were 12 days of Christmas. We hear about the 12 days of Christmas now, but every 12 of those days was like raucous singing, merrymaking, really debauched behavior, which had got nothing to do with religion at all. People didn't have holidays in those days, and so the 12 days of Christmas was really an opportunity for them to, as they saw it, sort of let down their hair and celebrate. Again, it got nothing to do with religion. I think that most Christians today, the ones that go to church, sort of celebrate the birth of Jesus. They know full well, as you rightly said, that he wasn't born on the 25th, but they celebrate the birth of Jesus, alayhi salam, in the same way, or they remember him and pray for him in the same way as we pray for the Holy Prophet, alayhi salam. I went to a carol service recently where I was a speaker, and I went with 3 Ahmadi friends. One of them said to me, "I'm really surprised that the Christians love Jesus as much as we love the Holy Prophet," which seems to be a bit surprising. So a lot of ordinary Christians who go to church see the birth of Jesus as the birth of the Messiah, as the hope of bringing light and peace into the world. And for them, that represents Christmas. Most of them are not particularly hung up on whether or not the 25th of December was the actual birthday of Christmas. And I think if we want to sympathize with them and become friends with them, we should share what we've got in common as far as our beliefs about Jesus and their beliefs about Jesus was the Messiah. And I think that some Ahmadis seem to think that they discover this fact about the 25th of December and they think, oh, well, we can go to the Christians, we can tell them that, 25th is all wrong, but that's not the right way to win friends, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need to make an issue of it, like you say. It's good to know the history of the Christmas for our own understanding, but there's no need to rub this into the wounds of the people. Now, it's interesting, the 12 days, of course, we see the Advent calendar. But again, each day of the Advent calendar, they will have a little present. But that Advent calendar ends on Christmas Day, whereas we mentioned here that that's actually the beginning of the Christmas season. So it's all sort of added through. Now, you mentioned about the Orthodox, of course, there are two main branches of Christianity, Catholicism, which of course Protestants have come from Catholicism, and one part is the Eastern Orthodox. So they had a different date. Do you know why they come with that particular date?
No, I don't know.
I think it's something I have to look into.
Well, I think it's because the calendars were completely different then, because we had the Julian calendar where there's a different number of days, and then in the 18th century we changed it to the Gregorian calendar under I don't know, George I, I think. So we've got the present calendar so that we have today. So the Russian Orthodox Church follows the Julian calendar, and that's sort of out of sync with our calendar, if you like.
I mean, yeah, the calendar, like you say, is all different, but with obviously the I don't know what you call it, the Georgian calendar or whatever, at least they fix a date of the 25th. We know how that came about. But it'd be interesting to see how they've come about with the different things. Another thing which you mentioned, of course, when I was young, I'm sure the same thing with you, people did used to go for Christmas Mass. Not as much, that many people, but some did. But again, that's dying out. These days, I think very few people sadly go even to celebrate Christmas Mass, which is a shame. I mean, that's the religious side of it, and there should always be a religious side of it. But it's become so materialistic now. And of course, as you mentioned about the date, but really, I mean, the shops are starting to sell Christmas things. Every year gets earlier and earlier. So it's become very, very materialistic. And of course, the same idea of drunkenness and partying, merrymaking is still there, unfortunately. Okay, has anybody got? Oh, sorry. Yes.
But it's all. A lot of Ahmadis get confused because they ask questions about: is it okay to put up a Christmas tree? Is it okay to have decorations and things like that? And you quite rightly said, no, it isn't. But people have forgotten what the symbolism of Christian is, of the birth of Jesus is for Christians, I think, really. And that's the actual religious teachings that they ought to focus on. I've just got one quick comment, if I may, and obviously you want to continue. The fact that Matthew, about the birth of Jesus and where he was born, the fact that Matthew doesn't say that Matthew was the hometown of Mary and Joseph. Only Luke mentions this. According to Matthew, Joseph and Mary were originally from Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, and not Nazareth. Matthew says that the family only made their way to Nazareth some years after the death of Herod. That's after they had to leave Bethlehem and spend time in the desert. And it was only later on that they went to Nazareth. So it doesn't make much sense, really, because why would a heavily pregnant Mary travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem, which is about 80 odd miles away? And there's no record of a census which is given by Matthew as Luke rather as the worldwide census. There's no record of that at all. People having to go back to their ancestral, say again, ancestral home in order to be counted. And what was the point if Jesus, if Mary and Joseph already lived in Bethlehem? You know, it doesn't make any sense because they would have had a house and relatives there, and the story about them living in the stable wouldn't really apply because they just live in the family home. And the account of the three magi, in Matthew it says they actually stopped. The star stopped over the house. It didn't say anything about a stable or anything like that. It's only this idea that comes from different accounts in the Gospels. I mean, the three magi are mentioned by Matthew, but in Luke, it's the shepherds that come and give, you know, to receive the good news. And the three magi aren't mentioned at all.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before in a different class, of course, about who wrote these particular books, these Gospels, and of course, these Gospels, although they're credited to people who seem to be the disciples of Jesus, they weren't actually the disciples of Jesus. And in fact, they were Gentile, it's generally believed. And just hearing, it's hearsay stories. And like I say, especially we find it quite common that they try to find verses from the Old Testament to justify or support this idea of Jesus and this idea of these three people coming to worship Jesus. Why would that happen? I think personally, this story, as you were mentioning, it doesn't ring true at all. Nothing seems to ring true. I mean, the Holy Quran talks about Mary being outside anyway, not even in the house, but by a date palm tree. So this is the thing. But as for Ahmadis, it's correct what you're saying. We've got to be careful of all these sorts of celebrations. Most of these celebrations in this Christian country are not religious at all. Now, of course, if your friend gives you a Christmas card, alhamdulillah, you should be very thankful and you should give them an Eid card. You can possibly give them season greetings cards. But one thing Ahmadis should not be doing is giving Christmas cards to other Muslims. Likewise, they shouldn't be having this Christmas tree and getting involved in this celebration. Yes, we recognize it is a Christian celebration. And of course, we want to have joy with them, just like they have joy with our Eid. But we should not be doing any form of worship or any form of getting involved in the Christmas celebration itself. Just obviously wishing them good Christmas season greetings and so on and so forth. So this is something which obviously we always try to educate the Ahmadis that we, although you're living in a Christian country, still keep to your own traditions. Yes, you're very lucky that you've got holidays for Eid, but you also can take the Christmas holidays. By all means, enjoy the Christmas holidays. But that doesn't mean we should get involved in putting up presents and Christmas trees and all this sort of thing. It's got nothing to do with us, and it's got nothing to do with Jesus. And as I said, we don't celebrate birthdays. So even if it did, we still wouldn't be celebrating like this. Okay, anybody else got anything they would like to say?
Rabbi, we have one question in chat. So a question is, can we have a Christmas roast dinner?
I mean, everything is according to intention. There's nothing wrong with having a roast dinner because you have a meal anyway you're going to eat. So turkeys are around there. So if you want to have turkey, that's up to you. That's, again, got nothing to do with Christmas. And it doesn't mean you're celebrating Christmas just by having a different type of meal. So variety is very good. So there's no harm in whatever you're eating. And again, if you're invited to your friend's house for a Christmas meal, again, there's no harm in that. But obviously, you just don't get involved in this celebration style. If they're praying or anything like this, this has got nothing to do with us. But we're always saying we should integrate. And if you get invited, I'm sure Muzaffar, maybe he sees his parents and stuff like that. And there's nothing harmful in that, going there, having a Christmas meal with them or enjoying the festival as we would invite them for Eid Milan parties and things like that. So there's no harm in that. But obviously, if you're going for a meal with Christians, be careful what you're eating, because unfortunately, a lot of the food has got pork in it, or there's wine also attached to some of these foods. So ask them, if you don't know, ask them and make it very clear that you can't eat pork, you can't have wine, so that they can steer you to something which hopefully hasn't got anything un-Islamic. Okay, anybody else got anything they want to say? I see we've got a Waleed Butter. Is he formerly a Christian? Would he like to say anything on this? I'm just going by the name. I don't know exactly who he is. I might have met him, but I don't recognize, or I can't think who he is. Does he want to speak? He doesn't want to speak, maybe. Okay, if anybody else has got nothing to say, we'll finish it there. Anybody else?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Muslim. Just my name is Buttar. Like it's misspelled Buttar instead of ER.
All right. So that's a Muslim, like but. It's like Buttar. Is this
it's
how you?
It's Buttar, but it's not ER. It's AR at the end.
Right. Okay. Sorry. That looked like an English name, but yeah, Buttar is a different name. Right. Okay. Like so I just saw the name and I thought, okay, maybe he's from a Christian background, but that's fine. Sorry about that.
That's all right. No problem, mate.
Right. Is there anything you want to say while you're on the speaker?
I found it quite interesting, like to see where all these like Christmas trees and everything came. So it's like really knowledgeable.
Well, I mean, like I say, these are all different customs that have come up, and this is why I'm just giving a little idea of how it all developed over the years.
It's Munawar here. I just want to mention one thing. Basically, for as a Burton Jamaat, we are planning to have external event on 26th of December, Jesus Alayhi Salam and Jesus Alayhi Salam in Holy Quran. So that event might be, useful for all other members as well. So that is just a simple announcement. If anyone wants, then I'm happy to share the details on Tabligh group.
Yeah, I'll highlight again what Muzaffar said. We shouldn't be hurting anybody's feelings. And normally at these sort of times, Christmas, Easter, and things like that, we tend not to do Tabligh too much and, like I say, throw these sort of things in their face. If they want to hear about Jesus in the Holy Quran, alhamdulillah, that's very good. But, obviously, beware if you can invite Christians to attend that particular function. But otherwise, it's good. And please always keep announcing your programs so that everyone knows. Right. Anybody got anything to say, or shall we finish it there?
Rabbi Saab, one quick question is from me. When you are invited by a Christian friend of yours to take part, what is the best way to decline? Because some Muslims I have seen, they flat out reject in a very rudely manner.
Well, obviously you shouldn't be rude. You should be politely saying no, making some reason and just explain. It depends what it is. But obviously, if you've been invited, they will know that you are Muslim. And so obviously there's a good chance they're expecting you to say maybe no. But you should be polite. Obviously, it's like anything, you should always be polite if you're not going to go. Just explain that, sorry, I don't want to go, and not be rude. So it's nice that they invite you, and we should appreciate that. And, we should always be doing it in a pleasing manner. We should never be rude on anything, no matter what's happening. If someone is abusing you, you shouldn't be rude back to them.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that at this time, if you are invited, it depends what you've been invited for. If it's for a Christmas party where there's drink and alcohol and people having a great time, then obviously the answer to that is no. If it's a group of people that you know, Christians that you know, you can take the opportunity to talk to them about in a very gentle way about the way that we honor Jesus as well, and that Jesus is a very important prophet to us, and that we recognize him as the Messiah, and that we understand also that they're celebrating the birth of the Messiah and the coming of peace into the world through the messenger of God. And those are the things that we need to share with them. We can share the Quranic side of it and compare it with the biblical side and talk about the actual religious importance, because we both believe in the birth of Jesus. We believe in it in slightly different ways, but the way that it happened, we still believe that he was. We can go halfway with them into not celebrating his birth, but giving the Quranic point of view, and show the similarities. So we should always take it as an opportunity to inform other people about what our beliefs about Jesus are, because most of them are really surprised because they know very little about Islam.
I agree, but obviously, like I say, we shouldn't be attacking their beliefs. By all means, presenting, like you say, what's the Holy Quran, and they will find that interesting, of course, because they know about what's in the Bible or they've heard. But like Muzafar's just said, very few people know actually what is mentioned in the Holy Quran. So that will be quite interesting for them. So there's no harm in that. But I'd say always be polite in whether you're going to accept or you're going to refuse. Be always polite, and by all means you can explain. And it's good to explain what we believe about Jesus in the Holy Quran. And as I said, this is actually removing many of the allegations. As I said, this virgin birth, for instance, is very clearly supporting that. And of course, other things, it's, with the death, in a way, this is a good thing if they realize that Jesus actually was successful in his mission. But main thing is that you should always be polite in whatever you're doing and make sure that you don't upset them. Right. Okay. So I think let's finish it there. And as I said before, if anybody's got any topics that they would like to discuss, please let us know. And inshallah, we will try to cover those in future events. Right. So if no one else has got anything to say, let's finish with silent prayer. Okay. Bismillah. Amin. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.